Alright, Steven Spielberg's remake of West Side Story has been out for a weekend now, so it is time for my spoiler talk. If you haven't seen this movie yet, I would steer clear of this video unless you don't care. And I'm also going to give you a spoiler warning for the original 1961 film, as well as the original 1957 Broadway show. Because really, this is where I get to compare this new movie to them. Yeah, honestly, this video is not going to be as much of a spoiler talk as it is going to be an in-depth analysis. Because I'm pretty much going to be going throughout the entire movie, comparing it to the original, telling you what I liked more than the original, what I think the original did better, and of course I'm going to be spoiling the story as well. So you have been warned. But before I dive in, I want to start this video with a flex. A while ago, Rachel Zegler put out a tweet actually showing how the title is going to look in the movie, and I called her out on it. I was like, did you really just show us how the title's going to look? And then she actually gave a response. She was like, maybe they'll fire me. I don't know. I just want to flex that Miss Zegler and I had this conversation before her very first movie came out. That's all. Alright, now let's talk about some West Side Story. So the first thing I'm going to touch on is the one character I didn't mention in my spoiler-free review. That would be Mike Feist as Riff, because just like everyone else, he was really good. And after watching this movie, I was like, oh, it's a no-brainer that Mike Feist was cast, because this movie really illustrates that Riff is a troubled dude. You hear Tony say that the world has been against Riff since he was born. There's the scene where he's buying the gun and he puts his head right up to it and he's like, might as well. I was like, geez, dude, you really got troubles. Which does remind me of Connor Murphy, the role in Dear Evan Hansen that Mike Feist originated on Broadway. The characters are pretty similar, so yeah, Mike Feist's Riff is just perfect. And so the movie starts off with that prologue just like the original, and when I say the original, I mean the 1961 film. If I mean to make a comparison to the original show, I'll mention it. But yeah, we have the prologue where the Jets are going around with the Sharks. But the first real big change happens after the prologue, where the police come and break up the gangs, and the Sharks leave, but then Bernardo turns back, and he starts singing the original Puerto Rican national anthem, and then all the Sharks join in with him. From this, you can tell that Steven Spielberg wanted there to be a lot of Puerto Rican pride in this movie. Since they are the immigrants to the US, it makes sense. I like the fact that when they're leaving and they're still singing, the citizens start cheering them on. I was like, damn, okay. Then we meet Tony. Now, Tony, this movie gives him a new backstory in that in here, he's on parole. Yeah, it turns out that Tony is coming fresh off of a year in jail after almost beating a rival gangster kid by beating him to death. And that totally makes sense. Yeah, after a year in jail, he's like, I don't want to go back to being a gangster because I don't want to get arrested again. So I'm going to change myself. I'm reformed now. That's different from the original. Because in the original, Tony just left the Jets because he wanted to, because he felt he was done with them and he wanted to just move on with his life. In here, it just feels more natural. And so we get to the song Something's Coming, and the difference it makes from the original is that in the original, Tony's just singing by himself, whereas here, he's singing this with Valentina in the room, and he's kind of singing it to her because she kind of gives him the inspiration. Because again, in the original story, Tony's like, oh, I just have this feeling like I'm reaching out for something. I don't know what it is, but it's just around the corner. But in here, Valentina gives him that confidence. She's like, those juvenile delinquents aren't good for you. You deserve better than this. And that's when he starts singing Something's Coming. It's an alright change. It makes sense. So after that, we meet Maria and Anita, and they're getting ready for the dance at the gym that night. And we meet Chino. Alright, Chino is really interesting in this movie. Because when we first meet him, he's kind of a shy, dorky looking kind of dude. He's shy about dancing with Maria. I mean, he does gain confidence throughout the story. And actually, it does set up right here the conversation that he has with Bernardo. He's like, you're the best friend I ever had. And Bernardo's like, you're the smartest person I've ever known. So it does show that, yeah, Chino and Bernardo are close friends, which adds to the tragedy later on in the story. I like that they set that up here. And so we get to the dance at the gym, which I love this scene so much. The whole 10-minute instrumental number is one of my favorite tracks on the soundtrack of any version of West Side Story. From the blues part to the promenade to the mambo to the cha-cha to the jump. I love it all. And Tony sees Maria, and this is interesting because she's there dancing with Chino, which is a change. Chino gains some confidence. He throws his jacket down and he's like, I'm gonna start dancing. And Maria's like, all right. But then Tony sees Maria and Maria sees him. In the original film, everything else just seems to blur out, and Tony and Maria walk towards each other and they start doing the cha-cha in the middle of the gym. But in here, nothing blurs out. Everything stays sharp. Tony and Maria see each other and they go behind the bleachers. And that's where the cha-cha starts. I'm not gonna say that's better than the original, but I will say the dialogue they exchange is a lot better than the original. Again, as much as I love the original, even when I first watched it, I was like, that dialogue is really campy.
So beautiful.
Beautiful.
Whereas here, the dialogue does feel more natural. Maria's like, you're tall. And Tony's like, yeah, I know. You're not. And then, in another change, Maria just goes in for a kiss. And I was like, oh, okay, Maria really wants to try something new. Tony's like, oh, I'm sorry, you just caught me off guard. try me again. And so they do kiss, because that's how it goes. And then they're caught by Bernardo and Anita. Ba-dum-bum. And that's actually where Tony learns Maria's name. And then, in a pretty major change from the original, this is where they put the Rumble setup scene, because Riff and some jets and Bernardo and some sharks, they go into the bathroom, and this is where they set up the Rumble. That's a pretty major change, because in the original, the setup scene is at docks, and it's not till a little later on in the story. Actually, way later on. Because in the original, Tony goes in and says, "What a coop full of chickens, you afraid to use plain skin?" He convinces them not to use weapons and just to make it a fist fight. But that doesn't happen in this remake. Nah, instead they're like, alright, we're gonna use weapons. And that's how it's gonna be. Rocks, chains. You do see that one shark with chains at the Rumble. So we have the song Maria. Maria, I just met a girl named Maria. What's interesting here is actually a couple of things. I mean, he's going down the alleys, he's actually looking for her, and that's why he keeps repeating her name. He's calling out for her. Maria, Maria. That's actually really clever. And it's funny when he sees one window and this old lady comes up and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, my bad." That was funny. And then we get to the balcony scene. Arguably the most popular scene in all of West Side Story. Because it's the equivalent to the balcony scene of Romeo and Juliet, where Juliet goes, "Wherefore art thou, Romeo?" Which is arguably the most famous scene in that play. So of course here, Stephen Sondheim's like, yeah, I'm gonna write a song for this scene. And it's gonna be one of the best songs on the soundtrack.
Tonight, tonight, it all began tonight.
I just love this scene so much. Again, I felt privileged to see it on the big screen done in this way. Plus, I love the fact that, again, in the original, I think it's Maria's parents who are inside and they call her to come inside. And Maria's like, "I'll be there in a minute." But in here, it's Bernardo and Anita who are inside, but they're too busy banging their brains out to hear anything that's going on outside. I love that. I was like, that makes a lot more sense. And it's funny. When they went inside the room and they closed the door, I was like, okay. And so Tony and Maria start singing. There is actually one bit from the original that I wish they hadn't excluded. And that's when she's called back inside, you hear someone call her Maruka. Tony's like, "Maruka?" And she's like, "That's their pet name for me." I don't know, I just really like that bit. It's really trivial, but I'm just saying. I will say, one thing I'm glad they excluded from the original is where Tony actually says to Maria,
"I love you."
Because even when I first started loving this movie, I was like, whoa, that's way too soon to say that. You just met like a few hours ago. Nah, that's a bit too much. All right. Take that out of this one. I will give props to that. So then we have another new scene. It's where Maria's getting dressed in her room, and this musical track is playing. It's called the Scherzo. This piece of music is actually part of a ballet that happens later on in the original show. But once again, like the original film, the ballet was excluded here. I don't know why, but it was. I guess this scene is this movie's version of that ballet with the Scherzo. It's a cute scene though. I like it. And so then we have the song America, which is another one of my favorite songs on the soundtrack because it's just so fun. I like to be in America, okay by me in America. You know, Anita has nothing against the whites. She even tells Bernardo, she's like, "You want to marry me? Leave the white people alone." What I really love about this song is that it's a diss battle between the men and the ladies in here, like it was in the original film. Everything free in America, for a small fee in America. But funny enough, that's actually not how it was in the original show. In the original show, the ladies sing all the lines, which to me just doesn't make sense. It's not like the lines are different. They're the same lines, so it's like they're dissing themselves? That just never made sense to me. So I like that they made that change for the 61 film, and I like that they kept that change for this remake. It just makes a lot more sense, and it makes this song so much fun, and one of my favorites on the soundtrack. Plus, Ariana DeBose just completely crushes it. There's that too. Everyone there will have moved here. That was great. One thing I also really love how they did in this remake is Anybody's, which is kind of funny because when this movie was coming out, they were like, "Oh, by the way, Anybody's in this movie is gonna be transgender." And I personally was like, yeah? Isn't that what Anybody's always was? At least that's how I always saw it, because, come on, watch the original. You're like, yeah, that's Anybody's. But I love the scene where Anybody's is defending himself in the police precinct. Just starts going to town on this one jet. You're like, damn, Anybody's really wants to be part of this gang. That was pretty badass right there, I gotta say. But then this is where we get to the song G Officer Krupke, which I will say in this remake is the most different musically from its original counterpart. Because in here, the song kind of starts off slow. It has that kind of cliche slow intro. Dear kindly Sergeant Krupke, you gotta understand. And the song doesn't speed up and get to its normal tempo until after the first chorus. Whereas in the original film and original show, the song just starts off that way. And if I'm being honest, I think I prefer the original film's version of this song over this new one. Even though I know this new version does use the original lyrics from the show, whereas the 61 version didn't. But overall, I think the 61 version was more fun than this one. Plus, Russ Tamblyn as Riff was so damn likable, and he did all those stunts. Yeah, that's another difference. In this one, the song takes place in the police precinct, Riff is somewhere else, so it's just sung by the other Jets, whereas in the 61 film, it's sung on the streets and Riff is there singing the lead. Yeah, I think I prefer that, but that's just me. But then, in another entirely new scene for this movie, Tony takes Maria to a museum, and I actually love this scene. I mean, first of all, they're on the train, and this is where Tony actually tells Maria, "I don't just like you," which, if you ask me, was actually a really good way to do it. Again, it was very clever. He doesn't straight up say, "I love you." He lets her figure it out. That's great. And this is where we get to the song One Hand, One Heart, which, like I said, is one of my least favorite songs on the soundtrack because it is slow and kind of boring. But in this movie, it was really well done. I mean, first of all, it was sung live by the actors, I could tell, and it was really impressive. And secondly, this is where they swear to be with each other forever. They are in it for the long run. Tony tells her he wants to be with her forever. Quiero estar contigo para siempre. To which I was like, para siempre, para siempre. Couldn't help but think of In the Heights. But this is a really good scene. Like, sure, I may like some songs on the soundtrack more than others, but whenever I watch West Side Story, I never skip any scenes. Cause even the slower songs have so much emotion. I feel it in the original, and I feel it here. And then there's another new scene. This is the scene where Riff buys a gun. And when it got to the scene, I was like, okay, what's going on here? Oh, right, this is for the Rumble. Tony never stopped them from using weapons, so now Riff's getting a gun. But now, this is where Tony's gonna try to convince them not to use weapons. Because of Maria in One Hand, One Heart, she's like, all right, Tony, you have to stop this Rumble. And so Tony goes to Riff, and this is where they decided to put the song Cool. And this is a major change from the original film and the original show. The song Cool was never sung by Tony. In the original show, it was actually sung by Riff, and it was done before the Rumble, but it was just Riff warning his fellow Jets about the cops. In the 1961 film, the song Cool and the song G Officer Krupke actually swapped places. Now in this remake, the song Cool was given a completely new change, and all things considered, I prefer the version of Cool from the 1961 film, because in there it takes place after the Rumble, so I'm jumping ahead for a little bit. Riff is dead, so now the Jets are like, what do? We want to get back at the Sharks. And Ice steps up, he's like, you gotta play it cool. And that's where the song Cool comes in. I prefer that, because that scenario makes the most sense to me. Again, that's just my personal preference though. But in this version, Tony is trying to take the gun away from Riff. They actually start fighting over it, and Tony fails and Riff gets the gun back. But right after that, we get to the Tonight Quintet, which is one of the biggest numbers in the show and another one of my favorites. Cause this song is building up the anticipation for the Rumble. And there's not much that they change here from the original, but I always thought that a really good place for intermission to be would be right after this quintet. Because it's all about anticipation, so we're like, oh, we're getting ready, and then boom, cut to black, intermission. I just would have loved that. But instead, we go right to the Rumble, and in another change, not only does Tony show up, but Chino shows up as well. So Chino actually gets to witness what's about to go down. And just like in the original story, Tony tries to stop this Rumble. He's like, look, Bernardo, I got nothing against you. You don't have to worry about me being with Maria. I mean you no harm. And if I offended you in any way, I apologize. But Bernardo ain't having it, and he actually throws a few jabs at Tony. And in this remake, Tony actually starts fighting back. I was like, oh, damn, all right. Yeah, Tony and Bernardo actually get into a brawl, and Tony actually has Bernardo pinned on the ground. He starts punching him. I was like, shit, Tony, no! I mean, of course, Tony does snap out of it, and again, I imagine this is to parallel what he originally did to get arrested. He almost murdered a kid by beating him to death. Tony doesn't want to go back to jail, but he lost his cool for a second. Whereas in the original, Tony never throws any punches at anyone. He's a complete pacifist. He gets into a fighting pose at a point, but then he's like, no, I don't want to fight. He's like the Iron Giant. But then Riff and Bernardo start fighting with knives, and Bernardo ends up killing Riff, just like it always is in this story. Tony loses his best friend, and in a fit of rage, he takes a knife and just shanks Bernardo. So yeah, in this Rumble, Riff and Bernardo both die. It was funny because watching this remake for the first time, I knew it was coming, but it was just so well done, the tension was still there. So props to that. And then after it's all said and done, Chino gets the gun. I like that it actually showed Chino acquiring it. And in the original show, this is actually where intermission is. It's right after the Rumble. I just thought I'd throw in that fun fact. And so then we get to I Feel Pretty, which they didn't change much. I mean, they changed the gay line to bright. In the original, Natalie Wood's line was I feel pretty and witty and gay. I guess in this remake, they didn't want to do that, so Rachel Zegler sings pretty and witty and bright. Alright, well, fair enough. But Chino shows up, and he's the one who breaks the news to Maria, just like in the original. Although this time he says it in Spanish. Mató a tu hermano! He killed your brother! I actually love the fact that they show the scene in the morgue where Anita sees Bernardo's body. That was completely new, but I loved it because I was like, holy shit, that's brutal. And from here through the rest of the movie, Ariana DeBose just completely crushes it. Seriously, she can sell sad like nobody's business. But Tony goes to Maria's place, Panic gets to the streets, it reaches Valentina's shop, drop, and now we have the song Somewhere, the famous song sung beautifully by Rita Moreno live as they were filming. I actually heard that Rita Moreno had a cold that day. This was the first instance watching this movie for the first time where I cried. Cause, I mean, come on, this was Rita Moreno singing Somewhere. I love that song so much. And this is unlike the 1961 film. In the original film, the song is sung by Tony and Maria, but that's actually a change they made from the original show. In the show, the song was sung... Oh, who was it actually? Well, it wasn't Tony and Maria. I think it was just a random ensemble girl actually. But here it's sung by Valentina and it's beautiful. This is one I actually prefer over the original film and the original show actually. So huge props to this. And yes, Tony and Maria do have sex here. And so later on, Anita comes home and she catches Tony leaving. And this is actually great. I love how she reacts to this. Because Anita comes in, she sees the bed and she's like, what the fuck, Maria? Anita's pretty pissed here. And in the original, she just starts yelling at Maria and she shoves her. But in here, I think they do it better. Maria's like, I love him. And then Anita just pow! Just bitch slaps her across the face. I was like, holy shit. That had some power. That was great. Definitely prefer that over the shove in the original. Because it really shows that, yeah, Anita is fucking pissed. And this is where we get to the song A Boy Like That / I Have a Love. And again, Ariana DeBose just completely crushes it here. In fact, this is the second time in the movie where I was watching it for the first time where I cried. Because just the way Ariana DeBose as Anita was just tearing up and crying. She was breaking down because she just lost her loved one. She lost Bernardo. Meanwhile, Maria is trying to convince Anita that she belongs with Tony. She has sworn to him they are in it for the long run. I found it funny that I cried during this song because this is another one of my least favorite songs on the original soundtrack because it is slower and kind of boring. But in this version, it's just not boring. It hits so hard with so much emotion, it got me. So serious applause and props for Rachel Zegler and Ariana DeBose in this scene, because I prefer this version over the original. Plus, they don't shorten the song like the original film did. So that's a nice bonus. Alright, so now Chino is on the hunt for Tony. He's got Riff's gun. All Maria has to do is meet Tony at docks and they can get away. But Maria and Anita are caught up in their apartment by Lieutenant Schrank, just like in the original, because the cops are asking about this case. And so instead, Anita has to go to docks to deliver a message to Tony that Maria's on her way. And now we get to the infamous taunting scene. Anita arrives at docks to find the Jets lounging there. All she wants to do is deliver a message to Tony downstairs, but the Jets don't want to let her. I'm gonna give you a trigger warning just in case. Because the Jets start harassing Anita. It gets bad, and actually what makes the scene more extreme in this remake is that Graziella, she tries to stop it. She actually begs the Jets not to do it, and they throw her outside, and she's banging on the door. She's like, don't do it! I was like, holy shit, yeah, that adds another layer to this scene. And finally, Valentina shows up and puts a stop to it, and so Anita confronts Valentina, and I like the irony here that this is, you know, Rita Moreno looking at Ariana DeBose playing the character that Rita played in the 61 film. I can only imagine what was going on in those actresses' minds when they were filming that scene. But because Anita is pissed, she lies to Valentina, and she says, yeah, Chino found out about Tony and Maria, and he shot her. Chino shot Maria, she's dead. Which of course isn't true, but Valentina tells this to Tony after kicking the Jets out, because she's like, you dishonor, you're dead. Yeah, watching this scene, you hate the Jets so much right now. But anyway, she goes downstairs and she tells Tony that Maria's dead, and this is what leads us into our finale. Cause Tony was just informed that his entire world has come crumbling down. So he's like, I have nothing to live for anymore. And he starts calling out for Chino. Chino, kill me too! Chino! And man, you want to talk about a heartbreaking end to a story. Tony is out in the streets, he's looking for Chino. He sees Maria just up ahead, and he's like, holy shit! And so Tony and Maria start running towards each other, but then in comes Chino, and right then and there, bam! Chino shoots Tony in the back. And every time you watch this, doesn't matter what version of West Side Story you're watching, you're like, oh no. Although in this version, Chino shoots Tony not once, but twice. And Tony goes down, Maria goes to his side, and instead of singing a reprise of Somewhere, like in the original, she sings a reprise of the balcony scene. Only you, you're the only thing I see forever. And really, I love how this scene is done, because it's pretty close to the original. Maria takes the gun from Chino, she starts pointing it, she's like, how many bullets are left? I love the line where she goes, how many of you can I kill and still have one bullet left for me? Because I've always seen that as a throwback to Romeo and Juliet, because we all know that at the end of that original story, Story, both Romeo and Juliet die. But no, here in West Side Story, Maria drops the gun, and so Maria lives, and only Tony dies. There is one thing from the original that I wish they'd kept in here. After she goes and still have one bullet left for me, Natalie Wood actually just breaks down and starts crying. She just has this breakdown. For me, that's a really powerful scene, because she just learned that her entire world has come crashing down. In this remake, she doesn't do that, at least not after that line specifically. But again, that's a really slight nitpick. I'm not saying either of the versions did it better, I'm just making the comparison here. But this remake ends as the story always does, with the Jets and the Sharks coming together to carry Tony's body away, with Maria following close behind, and Chino getting arrested. And thus concludes Steven Spielberg's remake of West Side Story. So, in conclusion, I will say Steven Spielberg's remake of West Side Story, it was phenomenally done. There were some things I think it did better than the original film, and there are some things that I think the original film did better than this remake. I'm not gonna say I like either one of them more than the other, because the fact is, I don't. For me, it's not a contest. We have the original 1961 classic film, and now we have a 2021 gritty, realistic remake. I now have two cinematic adaptations of an amazing Broadway musical. And you know what? I like living in that world. So, West Side Story, now that the remake is in theaters, I will ask you, what is your favorite song on the soundtrack? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, thank you for subscribing and watching this video. Now, if you'll excuse me, I actually gotta head over to my dad's place because tomorrow's his birthday. So I'm gonna spend the day with him. Peace!